Hey, welcome to the Political Show. This is the show that is just some political opinions with my commentary over topic. Before the state decides to outlaw being a Democrat or having any sort of leftist point of views whatsoever. I'm joking. I'm clearly joking, but on a serious note, the First Amendment is becoming less and less of a right and more of a privilege. So, if the First Amendment literally gets attacked and you can no longer make jokes about anything democratic or anything that's going on with politics, I wouldn't be surprised because the direction that the country is going, they're making it that if you have any opinion that is not the president's opinion, you're gonna get attacked and they're gonna say, sorry, you don't have the right to have that opinion anymore. And it feels scary in this time period to live in a time where these just having an opinion in general is starting to become attacked. Like I said, they've already tried to take away habeas corpus. They've already tried to take away freedom of speech in general. And it's just like, for the party that says they want to protect freedom of speech, they're being extra particular about it because like we protect freedom of speech as long as it's the speech that we agree with. That's not protecting freedom of speech. That's called being biased. Being nonpartisan, and if you know what the word nonpartisan means, it means you don't have a bias. It means you can talk about things objectively and not choose left or right, Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal. It's like you're not choosing a side. You're being able to speak objectively about information. Again, people are on the sides that they're on because they believe, based on their values in life, what is, what they will go with the party that best aligns with their values in life. Usually, if you're liberal, it means you're more open-minded. You want to let people live and let live. If you're conservative, you want things to be restricted and you want things to live within a certain set of rules. Like I said, you have values. It's like, okay, so like usually the conservative side aligns more with more Christian values. So usually people who tend to be more Christian tend to be more conservative because a lot of the things align with Christian values. But that being said, there's some things that are on the conservative side that can, rub a Christian wrong as well. It's just like, I might not necessarily support abortion, but I don't think that a woman shouldn't have the right to have her own health care just because we don't believe that, a child should be not given the chance to live. It's like, okay, but what about someone who was like taken advantage of and given a child from like their own family member, like an uncle or something like that? What do you do in that case? Well, life is still life. It's like, yes, a life is still a life, but now you have to explain to this child that they exist because that family member molested that young girl or whatever, and now that's the only reason that that child exists. And it's like, okay, well, that's a weird situation, right? And that's a unique situation. It's not like it's very simple to talk about. And again, I understand a lot of people saying, hey, I don't really want to have to deal with that. Let's just get rid of the child. Or let's just get rid of this fetus before it becomes a child. Because I don't want to have to deal with that or have my life ruined because of somebody's sexual perversion. And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, that's a child's life. It's like, okay, I understand children are children. I understand that a life is a life. But I also understand it's like, are we trying to deal with that problem early on? Or is that something that we're like, everyone has their own values. It's like you should give, children the chance to be on a certain experience life. It's like, I agree with you. That being said, we don't have a system that accommodates that. Like, we have two sides of this where it's like, all right, if we are going to live with the reality that people do get taken advantage of, we need systems that are going to accommodate those type of scenarios. Now, again, we shouldn't what's the right word I'm trying to use? Excuse that behavior by any means, but we also need to acknowledge the reality of it. It was like by not acknowledging that that reality exists, it's almost dismissive of it because it's almost like the value is over the other life than the woman. And it's like, don't get me wrong, valuing a fetus is not a bad thing. It's actually a pretty good thing. But also, by not valuing the woman in this scenario, she's the one who has to live with the consequences. And also, what tends to happen in those situations is that that mother tends to look at that child hatefully and with spitefully, because now her life has been changed because of this new life introduced into hers. It's like, well, that's what women are here for. It's like, okay, women are not just here for giving life to the earth. Women are not just here to provide life on earth. Again, that's what they can do and that's what their body does, but that's not their only purpose. But a lot of people tend to look at biology that way. It's just like, hey, women are here to give life, men are here to help that process. It's like, okay, while that is on a scientific level, what our bodies do, it is not our only purpose. Well, it's a God-given thing. It's like, okay, so let's talk about people's theories on what God has created us to do and God has not created us to do. On that logic, a lot of people say, okay, well, if God had made us to do it, we'd be able to do it. It's like, okay, just because we weren't able to fly in the air for a long time doesn't mean it's unnatural to do so. It just means that there are elements and factors that we can take advantage of that will allow us to do a thing that we would not be able to do if we didn't have the tools to do it. A lot of people said if we were meant to fly, we'd have wings. It's like, okay, you can continue to have that logic, but we do have machines that allow us to fly. And that's because we learned how physics worked. And that's what allowed us to, have the ability to do that. If you continue to have the mindset, if God meant us to do it, we would have the tools to do it. Then you tend to have the mindset of, we aren't meant to do what we don't have the tools to do right now. And that's just like, just because you don't have the tools to do it right now, it doesn't mean you don't have the ability to do it. It just means you don't have the tools to do it right now. So when it comes to like the topic of abortion, obviously we're not saying that it is a tool that should be used often. It's not a tool that we should be using. But what I am saying is, at the same time, just because we deem something not natural or we don't think something is natural doesn't mean it's not useful. Let me give you an example. Strawberries are genetically engineered. So are not bananas, broccoli. A lot of the foods that we eat come from genetically engineering plants so we can grow it to eat it. That's how most of our food is made. Now, again, if you ask people years ago, you aren't supposed to genetically engineer foods. Like, that's what oranges are. That's what plums are. A lot of the fruit and fruits that we have nowadays are not stuff that grew in nature naturally. It's all been stuff that are plant mixes that are hybrids of two plants. So, like, a lot of the stuff that we eat is not actually something that grew in nature that way. It's something that we have turned into a hybrid to extend certain flavors or to bring out certain traits in plants. But there weren't things that if you just had in nature grew that way. Now again, now that we have them genetically modified, we can plant those seeds in the ground and we can grow those type of plants. But again, from the beginning, those things didn't just exist. But the point I'm making is that everyone has different values for different reasons. And when you understand why people have the values that they do, or why they believe what they do about life, then you start to have grace and start to understand people's sentiments on life, even if it's different than your own. Anyways, all that to say, hopefully people start to learn to exercise nuance, so conversations like this can happen on an open level. But I don't think people really will, because obviously we're in a hyper partisan time where the Overton window is shifted hyper right, and to the extent where right is supposed to be seen as the norm and the default, and it's like, that's kind of scary, where the default mindset is supposed to be right leaning, and it's like, that's scary. Like I said, there was a time where Roe v. Wade was not ever in question, and now it's not only in question but almost illegal now. And to the extent, it's like, when did this become a reality where women's bodies no longer they no longer have a right to it, but now they are forced and obligated to put their life at risk for another life? And it's like, well, I mean, life is a beautiful thing, and if a woman dies, it's worth it for another life to come into the world. It's like, okay, but that's her life, and she exists now, and if it's putting her life at risk to have this child, that should also be considered, because like that's the other part of the conversation that we failed to realize, or that we failed to talk about, is people sometimes have legitimate health risk, or they cannot have a child, or they're they can risk dying because of, let's say, this child is not viable. Okay, well now they got to have that fetus, that no longer viable fetus, removed. Well, now that we don't have like those type of healthcare measures like in place anymore, a lot of people don't have access to those tools anymore. So it becomes impossible for them to access that type of healthcare, because it's like something that they said that people say is, oh, it's no longer needed. And it's like, it is a needed service, because if that's a scenario that needs to be dealt with, they need those tools, or they need that type of healthcare to take care of that situation. And again, it's much better to have something that's FDA approved, not FDA approved, I'm thinking that's Food Drug Administration, something that is that's professionally done and in a professional setting, that is more safe, and it takes all, health risk into account, as opposed to someone needing to, in an emergency, try to take care of that themselves, because we have medical professionals who know how to take care of that process safely. Like, we have medical professionals who are experts in that field, who can, in that case, if it's a fetus that's no longer viable, it needs to be removed from the body, and it needs to be removed from the body in a way that's not going to harm the woman. But that's not a conversation that we have when it comes to like women's health. It's just like, oh well, we don't want this service around because it serves this purpose, not the purpose of saving someone's life, not the purpose of treating someone who's septic, not the purpose of treating someone who might have some pregnancy complications. Like, those are other aspects that you have to consider when you're talking about a woman's body, because again, she could have complications that could put her life at risk. And when we're saying we'd rather let women die in that scenario than not let a fetus come to this earth, it's like, so we're valuing the fetus over women now, and that's what the new priority is. This fetus now is going to become a person, and if the woman dies, so be it, is what the new sentiment is. But I also understand where conservatives are coming from too, because this is also a conversation to have. Birth rates are going down. Birth rates are going down. There's a lot of reasons why. The economy has been in a slump for a while, and Trump is obviously continuing to say, "Oh, the world's great, and my economy is the best economy that's ever existed." It's like, buddy, I know you live in this fallacy that you think everything's going right, but no. There's a lot of people who will look at the economy currently and say this is not the best economy. People cannot afford to buy anything. People are not getting jobs because of AI replacing a lot of jobs. People are coming straight out of college in debt. So, like, you got to think about this. A lot of people are coming out of college in debt. They have a huge amount of debt, and they have to go to try to get an entry level job, and a lot of the entry level jobs are being taken by AI. So a lot of people are not able to get jobs. So there are a lot of people who can't get jobs or coming straight out of college who have a massive amount of debt, so that college degree doesn't pay off because they are in debt. And this is the thing that really upsets me about this society in general. Capitalism right now is, to its core, based on putting people in debt and keeping them in debt. And I don't like the fact that that's what capitalism has become, and that's what it reflects now, where we would rather you be in debt and be indebted to someone, as opposed to being someone who could save any amount of income. Like, you can easily get a college degree or a grant to go to college, and they will easily, again, the reason I'm talking about this specifically is I got a car loan the other day, and they were willing to give me a car loan in the moment. But when I was talking about getting a personal loan and trying to do like stuff like investing and stuff like that, I couldn't get a loan for that. And I'm like, why? And what I realized is that this is a debt-based society. They will quickly put people who need credit They will throw credit at them. They're like, oh yeah, you need this, you desperately need this, so we will give money to people who are desperate, but we will not give money to people who want to like have any ambitions for like entrepreneurship or doing stuff like investing, because we had to see a higher credit report, we had to see a higher credit criteria. It's like that seems backwards. You should be having a system that would build you up to do better, so you could do better financially in the future, not one that is predatory in nature and preys on people who are the most desperate. And but that's what we have. Like I said, you can get a cash loan faster than you can get a personal loan. And I'm like, that's so backwards. And what I'm seeing, and the reason I understand that's the way it is because it's naturally predatory. It's the same thing with getting a college loan. They will give you a college loan in a minute, which is like a few $100,000, but you ask for a few $100,000 to invest, to buy real estate, to go and purchase houses. That is not something you're gonna get money for. You have to like do a lot of work to get that type of money. Now, again, if you understand that system fully, yeah, you can like start, like you can buy a house and then put some money down. But again, it's much harder. There's so many more loops you gotta, so many more hoops you gotta go through to establish that type of money, to establish that type of business, to establish that type of income, because it's just like we are not just going to give that type of money to you. And then yes, I guess I understand that they are taking a risk by loaning that money out, but it's to the extent that it's harder for anyone who wants to try to like start a business or to make income that way. It's so much harder to do that, but in a heartbeat they will give a loan to someone who is incredibly desperate, who doesn't have any money. They'll basically give them a ninja loan, which is no income, no job, and they're not doing that anymore. But what they'll do is they'll give those type of loans to people who are the most desperate and with the highest amount of interest fees and so on and so forth. While not considering the fact that they are not in a place financially to take care of that. It's like, yeah, they need me, so I'm going to make them dependent on me, while at the same time taking advantage of their needs, or taking advantage of the fact that they don't have that type of income to cover that. And you realize how predatory it is, but that's what capitalism has become, where it's just like we'd rather have people in debt and be indebted to us than having any real chance of ever building wealth. And so people coming out of school, they feel like there's no prospects, no future, because again, the ability to at all build wealth seems impossible because they're already in debt. They're working at a job that is in no way paying this debt off, and they're just indebted to this debtor with interest. While again, people who are rich are getting much richer because they have assets, and assets always go up when inflation goes up. But it's just like, here's the thing about that. The reason assets go up because when inflation goes up is because the more money that's in the economy, everything's going to get more expensive. And inflation, what it does is it makes the money that we have buy less. So it means that things that are a certain value go up in value because each dollar buys less than they did before. So the buying power of each dollar is less, but the value stays the same, which means, let's say okay, I'll give you an example. You have a pizza, cut it into 8 pieces, and the value is half, or we're gonna say a fourth. The value is a fourth. Well, for 8 pieces, a fourth is 2 pieces, right? Yes, okay. But for 16, if it was cut into 16 pieces, a fourth is now 4 pieces. Every time you cut it into smaller and smaller pieces, it requires more to reach that value. We cut it into 32. Now, a fourth of that is divided by 4, 8 now. So, hold up. 32 divided by, I think that's correct. Yeah, that's 16. Yeah, that's 8. So, with that, the more pieces it gets divided into, the more it requires to reach that value. That is what's happening with inflation. When you have assets, the value of the asset stays the same, but money itself loses its buying power. And when it loses its buying power, it requires more of it to reach that equivalent value. So one of the reasons that people say adjusted for inflation, the nickel used to buy more, is like because we had less money then, and so our money had more buying power. Our money has been losing buying power for years on end, but it's almost accelerated in that extent where now it's like the buying power of our dollar has gone down significantly. Not to mention, economically, no one really wants the dollar right now because of what our government's doing. They're talking about authoritarian talk. There's a lot of authoritarian conversation in the conversation right now, and a lot of people are like, we don't trust the United States because we're afraid that they're going to invade us. They're talking about invading Greenland. They already just stole a leader from like another country. I don't think I trust the United States to be an ally because they're looking more and more like an enemy and someone that we can't trust. And also, we've seen this pattern before back in Germany, and when we saw that pattern then, obviously we didn't recognize it, and we should have. We learned about the patterns we learned about the patterns of that time period and how it came to be. So when we're seeing those same patterns in the United States, of course we're gonna back off because like we don't like the tendencies we're seeing. We're looking at these tendencies, we're looking at these behaviors, and they aren't promising to us. They aren't very reassuring to us. So when we see the United States looking more like an authoritarian nation, we don't trust it. We don't trust the United States to be an ally. We don't trust the United States to be someone we can trust because we don't know if we're going to get invaded or we're going to be deemed the enemy. And now they're talking about they're talking about separating from NATO. We don't trust the United States because they're becoming less trustworthy and less of an ally. And that's where we're standing. We're becoming an enemy of all the other countries. And on top of that, we've started to adapt terrorist tendencies. For example, when we started with our campaign in Venezuela, we started by striking boats in the ocean. And we didn't have a clear reason as to why. We said it was drugs, but then our motives seemed to change and we also started seizing oil tankers. And it's like, this seems inconsistent with what you're saying. You're saying it's one thing, and then you're seizing oil tankers, and then all of a sudden when we go to Venezuela, we're talking a lot about oil, and it's like, oh, so this isn't about drugs, this is about oil. We're talking about how good the oil is going to be there. It's like, oh, so that's what this was all about in the beginning. It was about oil. Oh no, it was about drugs. It's like, you can try to play this facade of it was about drugs, but when we invade Venezuela, the only conversation we're having is about the crude oil and how much that oil is going to give the United States. It becomes very clear that's what the whole intention was the whole time. So when you try to say, oh, it's about drugs, it's like, that does not hold up to scrutiny. Not at all. Like, you're looking at the fact that we just invaded Venezuela, and the only thing that Trump can talk about is how good this oil is going to do, how well this oil is going to do for America. And it's like, clearly it was never about the drugs. Like, very clearly it was never about the drugs. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. He knows what he's doing. It's like, yes, he does know what he's doing in terms of business, but lying about it doesn't help anything because it makes our allies trust us less, especially when we're saying it's about this and then we show our hand and guess what? It's not about the thing we said it was. It's about something else entirely. So, like, what I'm saying is that when we are consistently not being trustworthy and not being reliable with our word, we're becoming less of a trustworthy nation, and people are starting to look at us with a lot of scrutiny because they're like, I'm sorry, if you're gonna say this and then you change your rhetoric all of a sudden, or change your what is that? Not point of view. What is the word I'm looking for? Your claims halfway through, you become less trustworthy of an ally. And again, a lot of other countries are looking at it saying, we can't trust the United States because they're being too wishy-washy. They're deporting immigrants from their state. We can't even come into their state now because apparently they just don't want any immigrants in America. People who have been here legally all of a sudden get their legal status revoked. People who were here for educational reasons all of a sudden don't have the freedom to be here anymore. And it's definitely, I can understand why it's frightening to other countries, because imagine being here for a long time and then all of a sudden, again, they were saying we're just targeting this one immigrant or this one set of immigrants. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're not allowed here anymore because your immigrants might be bringing crime, or they might be coming from a crime-ridden neighborhood, or they might be coming with some mental insufficiencies. It's like, okay, where is this coming from? Like, why are you all of a sudden assuming that we're bringing immigrants in that are dangerous to your country? It's like, well, because we think that your country can be dangerous. It's like, okay, but this is new. This is not something a sentiment you've always had. You've never all of a sudden just decided that all the immigrants coming into the country were bad. And now you are. And we're concerned about that because we have been sending immigrants to your country for a long time. And for you to now just start saying, we don't want your immigrants here because they could be dangerous, is like, where is this coming from? Again, 9/11 made sense. And during that time period when you had a little bit more scrutiny of immigrants coming into the country, that made a lot more sense. But this is at least 20 years down the line from that, and this sentiment seems so out of nowhere. On top of that, you're sending immigrants away because they're critical of the president, when you used to be a nation that prided yourself on the ability of having free speech. Like, so one of the things that made America was your First Amendment, so your ability to have an opinion was protected. Like, the fact that you have an opinion and the fact that you have a belief is something you can very much say here. And it's seeming like more and more that America is becoming less of a place where your opinion matters and that you can have an opinion and you can have your opinion and your opinion can be protected. And now that a place where it's becoming extremely partisan and your opinion is going to be dependent on what the party at the top says. In other words, it used to be if the party was Republican or conservative or whatever like that, you could have your opinion if you were liberal. But now it's becoming more that if you're a liberal, you're now considered a terrorist. If you have left-leaning point of views, you're now considered a political agitator. In other words, it's now becoming the point of view needs to be my point of view, and this needs to be the default for the nation, to the point where it's almost being propagandized. And that's the next step. That is the next step that we're going, where if once it starts to become propaganda for right-leaning sources, it's like, okay, if we're going to have right-leaning point of views, so we're going to say that LGBT will never ever be taught again. We'll never talk about any homosexual tendencies or any homosexual ideas. All those things are going to no longer be talked about. We are anti-woke as a government, and because we're anti-woke as a government, anyone who wants to talk about gay ideas whatsoever are now an enemy of the state. And the more that type of propaganda and the more those type of talking points become more popular, it will literally become illegal to have those type of conversations. And it's just like, so you're saying that the default state of the nation now needs to be your beliefs. It's like, yep. It's like, that's not freedom of speech. That's authoritarianism. That's fascism. And it's just like, yeah, but we don't care. We want our values to be everyone else's values. Like, so since when has America ever been a nation where we suppress free speech to the extent that we start propagandizing to people and saying you have to have these right-leaning views, and if you don't, you're an enemy of the state? Well, when he started using language around any point of view that he didn't like as terrorism. And that has been a slow creep in every bit of his speeches. He's starting to say, oh, if you aren't Christian, you're a terrorist. If you have If you want to be trans, you're a terrorist. If you have any LGBT beliefs, you're a terrorist. And it's a slow creep of consistently saying any views that are not my view, any view that's not the political partisan view that is right and conservative, is now going to be considered terrorism. Like I said, Antifa is anti-fascist, but if you are anti-fascist, well, now you're considered a terrorist. It's like, hold up, hold up. So are you saying you're fascist? Oh no, we're not fascist. It's like, okay, so you can't say in the same vein that you are not a fascist, but when someone says they're anti-fascist, that group is terrorist. That group is a terrorist group. And so it's like, you're either saying you support fascism and you're just not saying the quiet part out loud, or you're not going to let any partisan view outside of the right-leaning and conservative view exist, which again, both of those are harmful. And the idea that you're saying that we value free speech, but you say because you don't agree with the partisan view that I have, then you're starting to say, okay, so you have to have my point of view, or you no longer are considered an American. And that's not patriotism. Again, that's authoritarianism, that's a fascist point of view, that's a dictator's point of view. It's where the leader's point of view is everyone else's point of view. And if you don't have that point of view, you're now considered a terrorist. And that is a scary America. And everyone in around the world is starting to see it. They're looking at America, seeing the tendencies that we're picking up and the type of language that's being adopted. And it's like, yeah, when you see America all of a sudden become more and more about, we don't want you to talk anymore, we don't want you to have an opinion anymore, we don't want you to say anything unless it's what we think is true or think is okay, then we're not going to let you talk anymore. Like I said, it's funny because, okay, let's talk about what happened with Charlie Kirk. What happened to him was extremely unfortunate, but you can't say we don't support political violence, and then when Rob Reiner dies, oh, it's okay because he had the Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, you are a hypocrite. I'm sorry, you're a hypocrite. You cannot, in the same vein, out of the same mouth, say, hey, we don't support political violence, but then laugh at someone because they're not on the same political side as you. Like, again, I'm glad for the Republicans who called them out on that, because they're like, that's evil. That's evil. I'm sorry, that's pretty heinous to say we don't support political violence and then laugh at someone because they're not sure, because they're not on the same political side as you. Because they're your political opponent, you're saying this person deserved what happened to them. It's like, they were murdered. They were murdered by their son. And it's like, well, yeah, that's okay because he had Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, oh, so if they're not on your side, it's okay if they die. But if they're on your side, it's a heinous crime against America. Again, this is authoritarian language. All right? It's very simple. It's partisan language. It says, if you are right-leaning, I'll support you and we will protect you. If you are not right-leaning, we'll make fun of you. That is partisan language. That is partisan language. It's not nonpartisan anymore. Matter of fact, the government is becoming less nonpartisan and more strictly and highly partisan. And so what's happening is America is becoming more restrictive of their speech while saying, "Oh, we're the land of free speech." No, we're not. No, we're not. No, we're not. We are not the land of free speech anymore. We're not the land of being able to speak out your mind and have your political opinion anymore, because that's no longer protected. That is no longer protected right. That is not something you have the right to have anymore. If you have an opinion, you're not allowed to have that opinion. And that's becoming more and more clear every day. That's why our allies are becoming afraid of us. And they're like, or don't want to work with us. It's like, sorry, we're watching you due to your own citizens suppressing their speech. We're watching you attack your own citizens. We're watching you send the military on your own citizens. If it's not the military, this group that's under the president attacking citizens. And whether that's a militia group or not, we're seeing the patterns. And that's enough for us to say, sorry, we're backing off because we don't trust what's going on in America right now. Which makes sense. I mean, if you, again, just from an outside perspective, look into America and you see a group of masked agents beating up people on the streets. And again, some of them are protesters, but some of them are just going to work. And it's just like, yeah, we're going to continue to crack down and foment fear and continue to push this idea that you cannot operate outside what we think you should do. And again, I just saw this on X the other day, and I hope it's not true, but I'm pretty sure it might be. It's like, if you're an American citizen, you need to be prepared to show your papers. It's like, you're trying to tell me that in America, that American citizens need to now prove their citizenship?
That's not my code name.
You right.
That is not a free nation. That is not a place where you walk with liberty. That is not a place where you have the privilege to be free. You are not free. You are under tyranny at that point.
Just sniper. Come on, I can't
So
hold on
when
forever.
people say stuff like, oh, well, we still live in a free nation, clearly not.
Well, Hunter, see you
If
soon.
I have to prove my citizenship to you in order to live here, then that means freedom is not part of America anymore. It's exclusive. It's being exclusive. It's saying, hey, we want a few people here and we don't want a few people here. Which means even if I prove I'm an American citizen, if they decide that they don't want me here, yeah, they can just decide, sorry, we don't want you here because of your opinions, because of your beliefs, because of your ideas. We don't care. We're gonna get rid of you. And it's just like, so it doesn't matter then. You're not talking about liberty. You're not talking about free speech. You're not talking about the ability for people to live in America and be free. You're talking about a place where your freedom of speech is now limited. And your freedom of experience, of influence is now limited. You are not allowed to have an opinion. It's like you can only speak the points that the king says. And it's like, well, I mean, we're been living under a king for a while. And that king continues to be a tyrant. And again, it's not that he's a bad person. He never was. He has these points of views that he thinks he needs to now try to control people's speech in order to limit who they are and what they can do. It's like, I'm sorry, you don't get to have any real opinion. You get to have my opinion. If you don't have my opinion, you're going to jail. It's like, oh, that's what you think America should be? You think that America should be a place where free speech is not a part of it anymore? But it's funny because it's very clear at this point that the Constitution is not something they value. They don't care about free speech. They care about Second Amendment. Oh yeah, sure, you can bear arms all day. But speaking out, having an opinion, no. Only thing you say is what the propaganda says, which is praise the terror king. Praise him. He is the best king of all over the world. And you have to praise the king. And if you don't praise the king, you're gonna get arrested, or you're going to be severely punished for having an opinion outside of the political, partisan, propagandized opinion. And again, if propaganda is the next step, then we're already cooked. If propaganda is the next step, if that's what we're doing, we're already cooked. Because that just means it is no longer viable or no longer feasible to have any other opinion than the opinion of the state regime. And that's what's happening. It's like we are slowly moving in the direction where it's now becoming a state regime, where it's now becoming an opinion where you have to have the opinion of what the king says, or you're an enemy of the state. And that's scary. So yes, I understand why our allies are like, we're backing away from America because this looks dangerous to us and we don't want to be part of it. And yeah, truthfully speaking, I understand why there's so many people who are truly afraid of what America's becoming, because it's starting to take on authoritarian tendencies. And meanwhile, the media is saying, oh, it's not that. It's like, you can continue to lie to our faces if you want to, but it's not the first time we've been lied to. Just like with like the beginning of the term, it's like the president consistently said, oh, I'm not gonna mess with Medicaid, I'm not gonna mess with Medicare. Yeah, how did that work out? I'm not gonna tear down the East Wing. it's gone. And we're not gonna mess with vaccines. Hey, you don't need this many vaccines, and if you want to get vaccines now, you gotta pay for them yourself. They're gonna consistently keep lying as long as it keeps working, and they're gonna continue to keep doing it because, again, they want you to let your guard down so they can do what they want to do without any pushback. So that's why lies work, because it's there to. Hold up. I can't get off me. So they're there to make you let your guard down, and when you let your guard down, they can sweep in, do what they need to do, and by the time you realize they have changed the rules and changed the game, it's too late. Once they lie, again, it's like, oh, they're not gonna do that thing that we thought they were gonna do. Boom, they go ahead and do it, and now you're like, oh well, I guess I can't do anything now because we're just privy to it now. We're just subject to it now. Compliance and complacency are an authoritarian regime's best friend. And unfortunately, if we start getting to the level where propaganda is the new norm, then that will come automatically. For the exact reason that once you hear something long enough, it reaches your subconscious. And once something becomes your subconscious belief, it's not something that can be undone easily. See, this is something that Trump understands very well, which is saying something long enough makes it. Ready to unleash this. And I know that sounds like something that seems fictional, but no, it's a psychological thing. When you hear something long enough, you believe it's true because you've heard it long enough and you have enough time to believe it. And so when you hear something consistently, you believe it's true. One of the reasons that Trump continues to say, I won the 2020 election, is because he wants that point to stick. He wants that point to stick. He wants that point more than anything to stick. And as long as he says it, then it becomes more and more true with every statement. Even if it didn't happen, the more he says it, the more that statement becomes true. He understands on a psychological level, repeating something makes it true. And guess what? It does. Because we are pretty simple. And I know that sounds insulting. I'm like, it's not a lack of intelligence. It's not a lack of being able to decipher the truth. It's the fact that we are wired to adapt some information subconsciously. So there's an active part of our brain, which is the thing that we use that requires the most amount of energy and focus. Let me give you an example. Walking does not require any focus, but riding a bike requires a little bit more focus. If you've done it a few times, again, it's not something it's not going to require a lot of focus. And running requires more focus than that. Exercising requires more focus than that. And writing requires more focus than that. Why? Because it requires your active brain. So when you have something that requires your active brain, or something that requires you to actively focus on it, it requires your brain to put more energy on that task. But your subconscious brain is the part of your brain where you have mastered something and you no longer need to use a lot of energy to recall that thing. Those are pretty hardwired tendencies or practices you have. So your subconscious brain is the part of your brain that uses less energy to do a task that's very complicated. Now, when you first were doing that task, it required more focus because it was hard to do. That's why if you started off as a baby again, you wouldn't just be able to walk again because you wouldn't have those connections formed. One of the things, again, I think a lot of people, think that if they were a baby again, or they went back to being young, they'd be able to just get up and start walking, but you can't. And the reason why I can say this confidently is because those connections that you have now are ones that you developed over time. Like, the reason you can talk like so fluently or so clearly is because you've done it for such a long time that it's something that you can do naturally. That's the reason that it's easy to do. That's why you understand English. That's why you understand the language you understand, because you've done it for such a long time, or you've heard it for such a long time that it comes naturally. But that's because those connections have been established. And without those connections, it's a lot harder. It requires a lot more focus to do. But once those connections are established, it requires less focus to do. Let me give you an example. You play a video game for the first time and it's pretty hard because you don't have the controls down. But then you get the controls down and boom, now this part is part of your subconscious brain, and now it's something you can do without even thinking about it because it's part of your hardwired network. Once it's something that you know how to do, it becomes the strongest connection, it becomes the strongest connection, and then boom, you know how to do it automatically. So it requires less energy, and once it requires less energy, you can do it automatically. That's what the subconscious brain does. So, I said that incorrectly, but what Trump understands is if I continue to repeat this, it'll become part of the subconscious brain because it'll make a connection where they hear that statement and they know what it means. Even if they don't believe it, they will hear it and it'll start to make a connection at some point to the point they start to believe it. And that's what happens with subconscious messaging, subtle messaging. And what the president does is says, hey, I won that thing. He says it enough times until it becomes cemented as a truth. And guess what? It works. It's a very effective method that works. The subconscious brain is very easy to trick and it's very easy to train. Yet most people don't know about it. And so when they hear stuff like that, it's like, that's not going to affect me. It's like, if you hear it 20 times, it will. Because you're going to hear that message and at some point you're going to start reconsidering, maybe that could be true. And you know what? Maybe there is a possibility. Hey, maybe, and as long as you hear a message long enough, you start to dwell on it. And that's what makes that connection stick. Because it's not about it being true. It's about hearing it enough times that you actually reconsider it. Let me give you an example. If I came on here every day and said the earth is flat, you might think I'm crazy. But if I say it every single day and I say it with such conviction that you might actually start reconsidering that the earth could be not round but flat, then you might say, okay, that's stupid. It's like, yeah, but here's the thing. The subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between fact and reality. Oh, sorry. That was fact and fiction. Point being, I really just said that, the understatement. Point being is, when you hear something long enough, it starts to play with your subconscious brain. And once something is in your subconscious brain, it's a lot harder to get rid of. That's why old habits die hard, because once it's something you do subconsciously, it's something you do automatically. You don't think about it, you just do it. Your habits drive you more than your active mind does. Your active mind focuses on the now. Your subconscious does things automatically. That's why if you've had a smoking habit, you might need to have something that is equivalent to that smoking habit in order to stop it. Hey, you try this thing called fume, where it's like smoking, but it's actually not nicotine. But it's just the action of smoking to get that habit away. Why? Because your subconscious brain is used to that action, so you're doing it automatically. Once something is part of your subconscious brain, it's there forever. And it's not until you untrain your brain to have those habits where those habits go away. But it's very hard because it's hardwired into your habits, into the way you do things. It's an automatic thing. It's an automatic connection. Once that connection is there, it's hard to get rid of. And Trump understands this very well. He understands this very well. He understands that if he continues to repeat something, that it will stick. And that's why a lot of people don't understand why his tactics work. It's because he's good at influencing people. He's very good at it. He's very good at it. He's very good at it. Doesn't make him a bad person, but again, a lot of people like trivialize simple things like psychology, and it's just like, okay, talking to the subconscious mind is very easy. That's why a lot of advertisements got banned, because they knew how to deal with, make advertising that would make people hungry or make people act and buy something, because it was like, okay, so they understood that it was like speaking to the subconscious mind in a way that was causing people to act. And it's like, well, that's illegal. You shouldn't cause people to act. It's like, okay, but it's a simple trick to exploit. It's pretty simple. It's getting people to feel triggered to do something and go do it, and training their brain to go do it. Well, you shouldn't do that. Now, obviously, I will say advertisement arrangements have changed up and they're not as strict. but it still works. These are things that still are very effective, and because it's not something we actively think about, or not something we actively consider, we're often influenced by these factors on a daily basis without realizing we are. And it's because it's become part of our daily lives, but it's also something that people don't know about. Like, people don't realize how easy it is to train the subconscious brain. A lot of people think subconscious training is all about being easy to trick or being gullible, and they misunderstand. It's like, it's not about being easy to trick or being gullible. It's that if you hear something and see something long enough, it'll make you question whether what you believe is true. Like I said, if you saw ads every single day that says the earth is flat, you were lied to. Again, you might not at first believe that the earth is flat, but seeing it long enough, it might make you question everything you know, even if it is something that you've never questioned before. Because what it is a subtle type of rewiring, which is, if you have a message in front of you long enough, at some point you're going to consider it. Now, most of the nation, when they hear Trump say, or when they hear the president say, he won the 2020 election, don't really consider this. But for his base, who's consistently hearing, I won the 2020 election, it's a lot harder for them to refute that because they're consistently hearing that. So for them, that's a truth. That's something that they feel like is a stark reality, and that is the reality. And you might be dismissive and say, oh, they don't actually believe that. It's like, no, if you talk to someone who actually is like true MAGA, they believe that with all their heart. And why? Is because they've consistently heard that. So because they've consistently heard that, they believe it's true. Well, how could they believe it's true? There's so much evidence to the contrary. It's like, it's not about the evidence. It's not about the facts. It's not about the truth. I haven't seen my family in ages. The fact that if you hear something long enough, it can make you reconsider everything you know. And this is something that the president understands very deeply and very well, which is why when he does his messaging, it works. When he repeats the same talking points, when he continues with those talking points, he understands that that makes people start to let their guard down and accept this knowledge, even if there's evidence to the contrary. That's why he continues to repeat the messaging around Renee and Nicole Good, because again, if he can get enough people to believe that and to rewrite the narrative, then all of a sudden, even if there's evidence to the contrary, it does not matter, because he has enough people on his side validating the points he has already repeated. It's not about being gullible. It's not about being easy to trick. It's about one simple trick that does work, which is training your subconscious. And when someone repeats a lie long enough, it becomes true. Whether or not that truth is true or not, it becomes true because people start to believe it as true, and they act on that information as true. I tried to explain this concept to my friend the other day. He's just like, okay, the reason I don't talk to flat earthers is because after hearing that conversation long enough, I start to reconsider whether or not I understand if the earth is flat or not. And I know it's not, but because I know also that hearing something long enough will make you reconsider what you know, I'm very careful with the information I let in. So I'm like, even though I understand that the earth is not flat, I know if I hear that message long enough, even I will reconsider whether that's true or not. It's not a matter of being gullible. It's not a matter of being easy to trick. It's something that our brain has a hard time fighting, because constantly hearing misinformation for long enough becomes truth. And it's a concept a lot of people can't wrap their heads around. The fact that you can trick somebody by repeating something long enough. It's like, I'm not trying to say this in a way that people are gullible and just stupid. It's like, it's not a matter of stupidity. It's not a matter of intelligence. It's a matter of the way our brains work. When you want a habit, you repeat it long enough until it becomes second nature. And it's the same thing with lies. If you want someone to believe something, repeat it long enough and continue to put that thing in front of them long enough, and they will start to believe it, or at least reconsider it, because our brains are not wired to understand facts. They're wired to understand patterns. That's why if something is put in front of you long enough, you'll start to believe it's true. And there are plenty of books you can look to reference this and to look at this, but it's true. It's very simple to. Okay, I need to actually give like some examples, some book names. And I actually might put like some book titles up on the screen here so you can know what I'm talking about. But I would encourage you to look at books talking about the subconscious and how to establish habits and habit training, and how important it is to establish habits of repetition or hearing something, or even mantras. And one of the reason mantras work is because if you say something every day, you'll start to believe that information. If you say, I'm the best person at writing, or I'm a very organized individual, whatever, you just say a mantra every single day. The point of saying that is to train yourself to believe that, or to focus on that, or to ingest that information. Well, what if that's not true? It's not a matter of whether it's true or not. It's a matter of whether or not that becomes something you act on. Again, your brain is not trained to understand facts as much as it is much as it's trained to understand patterns. And once you give it a pattern for it to recognize and it picks up on that pattern, it automatically acts on that. That's why when a person starts smoking and stops smoking, they still have that habit to want to smoke, or to want to bring something to their lips and puff out, because that's part of their nature. It's second nature. So this is all I'm saying. Don't underestimate the power of someone repeating a lie, because the subconscious is very easy to train. Let me give you another example. Fake news, false media. Again, his base believes that everything that is not Fox News or the media that he approves of, I just said that incorrectly. With any media that he approves of, is fake news, because he's repeated that lie long enough, or that, I said lie, but I meant line. He's repeated that line long enough that people have just ingested that as true.
Alistair's a rescuer.
Again,
in the
not
flesh.
a matter of being intelligent or gullible. It's just once something is repeated long enough and it's presented to you in a consistent basis that way,
you did
it becomes adapted as a true understanding or truth in the world.
Sister contacted you, didn't she?
Where we are
She
complex
did.
beings,
Aurelia
but there are
Hammerlock
aspects
said
of us
she'd
that are
pay me
simple
to leave
to
Eden
exploit.
6.
And if you don't know
damn
about that,
harpy.
then
Anything
you
Aurelia
might
offers
find
in
yourself
one
privy
hand is
to
only
that
to
type
distract
of
from the knife in the other.
exploitation
Set
without
foot in that
realizing
manner,
you
she
are.
will try
And
to
that's
kill
why
you.
it's important to continue to educate
Which
yourself
is why
about
we're going.
stuff like your subconscious and
Vault Hunter,
habit
you
training,
did right by
and
us, hiring Alistair from a
establishing
family
good
of
habits, and how important repetition
Jacobs
is.
is true to
Because
his word.
these
I'll
are
get you
things that
that
are
vault
subtle
key. But that
that
means
people
both
can
you and
overlook,
I
or
are
just
going
not
into
even
that
know about,
Harpy's
because
den
they don't
together.
think it's a big deal.
key's
And
been in
it
my
is a
family
much
for
bigger deal
generations,
than
but
we
the exact
realize.
location,
But as
well,
long
that's
as
one
we are
secret my father
unaware
took to his
of those
grave.
things and not
You
aware
accept
of like how
Aurelia's
those things
invitation
affect
and
us,
keep her distracted
we could
while I
be
search the manor for the key.
exposing ourselves to subconscious beliefs or subconscious trainings without realizing it. And it's not until you understand how that works that you start to realize, oh, okay, that's something that's easy to exploit. Anyways, I've talked to you off long enough. Point being is, I understand why all the other countries are they're looking at us with skepticism, because the direction this country is going is not ideal in my opinion. But if we at least see the signs of what it's doing, what's going on with the country and where it's going, we can at least deter it or stop it or slow it down. But if people are going to turn a blind eye to it and be complacent and be compliant, well, I mean, I can understand the compliance, because pretty much the regime right now running a fear campaign. But as long as people are complacent, nothing will change. And as long as people are holding on to this idea that, you know, it's not going to affect them or come to their doorstep, again, it doesn't take a lot for authoritarianism to happen, but it is a slow creep. But if people continue to turn their eyes away from all the evidence that's in front of them, then it will be at their doorstep faster than they realize. Food for thought.